So it sounds like you've been through the process, you've been in the trenches, you know what it's like. I can tell you're really speaking from experience about all of this. What was your law school journey like, going through the process? Not only the embarrassing portions necessarily.
I can always tell my embarrassing stories.
Maybe later if you want to. But
okay, that's another podcast. Leah at the Law School Toolbox shares all of her embarrassing stories.
It's like a bloopers reel.
Totally.
But even just what your journey, starting from how you started off 1L semester, what was it like for you, and what did you learn along the way?
Was a little bit older than some law students. I was 25 when I went back to law school. I had been working since undergrad. I was not sure I wanted to go to law school when I graduated from undergrad. My parents are lawyers. I swore up, down, and sideways I would never go to law school. And so I kind of came at this journey that I wanted to go back to school, and I didn't know what for. And I felt that law was somewhat flexible. And so I set these goals for myself. I'm like, if I can make myself study for the LSAT, then I must want to go to law school. So I studied for and sat for the LSAT. And I was like, okay, now if I can make myself apply and write an essay, that I must want to go to law school. And so I just kind of set these little intermittent goals. And then all of a sudden I'm like a 1L and was like, I guess this is my next chapter in life. And so I got to 1L year, and, I think I did find it somewhat humbling because of this idea that you don't get a lot of feedback while you're in that 1L year. I think some law schools are better about this than others, but I didn't have any midterms. I didn't have, any feedback on any writing assignments. And so, you're just kind of studying, hoping you have it figured out. Now, I did have the benefit of going home over Thanksgiving while I was studying for my 1L exams. People who've heard my podcast have probably heard this story, where my mom, who is not subtle, sits down at the table and is like, so how's torts coming? It was my first test. And I was like, it's great. I understand. I start to talk to her about it. It's this example of you have to be able to talk about what you know. And she's like, oh, that's very nice. So why don't you tell me the elements for XYZ? And I was like, well, I mean, I know the gist. And she was like, okay, here's a problem. You have to know the elements for the test. Did you know that? And I was a psychology media studies major in college. I had never had to memorize huge amounts of information like that for an exam. I'd never taken an exam that required that level of detailed memorization. And I thank her for that wake-up call over Thanksgiving, because I frantically kind of regrouped and started to recognize that I had a lot of work to do. And so I was able to somewhat regroup, but my first semester grades were not my most impressive because I regrouped a little late in the game. And that's just because it's so different. That when we work with students in our one-on-one tutoring programs and in our Start Law School Write program, we make sure that you understand what it's like to write an exam answer, because to understand the end game is very important. So I didn't understand the end game until I was really, through the first semester. Then I was like, hey, I need to get my act together. So the second semester, I really kind of upped my game. I now understood the end game. I studied in a more productive way. I had better outlines. I did a lot more practice. And then all of a sudden, I'm performing much better in my class. Join the law review, start doing on-campus interviewing, get a big law job offer for my second semester summer, and then kind of continue through law school. I was the managing editor of the law review. I did a tutoring in law school. And so I became very involved in producing not only great legal writing, which was what I was doing on the law review, in my opinion, but helping people through. I was teaching assistant. I did one-on-one tutoring for students with academic who were on academic probation. And so I really started to kind of get interested in how we do this process. So after graduation, I became a big firm lawyer, decided that was not my calling in life, and then shifted to start teaching, and then eventually did this business. So that's kind of my journey through law school, I guess, in a few minutes.
Oh, wow. That's really something. So it sounds like that one comment from your mother about the elements was like this big wake-up call for you.
It really was. It really was. And I just kind of frantically had to change gears. And I think that it's not that uncommon that people have to have some sort of wake up call. I think that some schools are being better about being very honest about what you need to do for these exams. But I think that you can get so caught up in the day-to-day grind of law school, which is reading cases and briefing them and going to class and, getting cold called on and sitting in your study group and, arguing over hypotheticals and, kind of thinking outside the box, that I think we can forget because you're not studying for, intermittent exams like you would maybe in an undergrad class, that there's an end game. And the end game is they hand you a fact pattern most of the time, and you have to have all this law memorized then that you can recall and apply to that fact pattern. Because what thinking like a lawyer is, you hear this term a lot when you enter the law school experience. You have to learn to think like a lawyer. Well, anyone can memorize elements, right? I mean, just about anybody. You don't have to go to law school to memorize a list of things. What lawyers are taught to do is take that list and take a set of facts and apply those elements to the facts and be able to argue in the alternative when there are gray areas of ambiguity. That is what law school is really teaching you. So when you're in class and your professor is talking about what the plaintiffs argued and what the defendant argued and how one judge thought it should be this way, but the other judge wrote the dissent and thought it should be this way. This is ambiguity. This is the gray area. This is the fun stuff that makes the law interesting. But we don't really focus on that sometimes in law school. And what they're trying to test is, can you get a fact pattern and find that ambiguity, argue both sides, and show that this knowledge of law can be applied to these facts? So I think what a lot of students do is they think, all I need to know is know the law. And that's wrong.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.